Tonight on Bridge City News, there's a group which wants to see the criminal code amended to add conversion therapy. We hear their concerns. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau wants to implement a ban on items like Q-tips and plastic bags by the year 2020. We have the details. And we hear a powerful story of how Samaritan's Purse is making a difference in communities hit by powerful storms.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Robbins.
Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. A working group created by the previous Alberta NDP government to study a potential ban on conversion therapy will not be supported by the current UCP government. Health Minister Tyler Shandro broke the news to the group in an email. He says the group's mandate elapsed when the NDP lost the April election. Shandro says he will still be willing to hear from advice from the group. Jen Takahashi with the Lethbridge Public Interest Research Group says she has a lot of support behind Bill S-260, which is before the Senate, which would add conversion therapy to the criminal code.
So Bill S-260 is in response to Devin Hargraves, Wyquerel and Alperg's petition to the federal government to ban conversion therapy. The government in power said that instead of legislating it, they were going to pass it off to the provinces, which we know is not going to be effective. And the Senate stepped in and introduced a bill to add conversion therapy to the criminal code. It has gone through its second reading and is in committee, and this will put conversion therapy for minors advertising or profiting off of it into the criminal code. It is a very important step in the process of banning this heinous practice. When you grow up queer and you're in an affirming church or in an affirming family, there is no greater feeling in the world. And when you are growing up in an environment where you are being told that you are wrong, that you are sin, that you'll be kicked out of your family, your homes, your jobs, all of this, it's a horrible way. People shouldn't be penalized for being who they are. And to see that it gets extended to rape, abuse, and torture, trying to force people to change who they are as humans, it is absolutely abhorrent, especially in 2019, especially in a country that considers itself as the leaders in human rights in the world. It is awful.
Takahashi says she's been in touch with Calgary Pride, which wants to see a municipal ban on conversion therapy. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he plans to ban single-use plastics by the year 2021. Speaking at a nature reserve south of Montreal, the PM said the items would be banned include water bottles, Q-tips, plastic bags, and straws.
Imagine some of your fondest memories. Maybe you're camping or cottaging, canoeing or fishing. Now imagine those memories punctuated by dead birds or fish. Or maybe a pile of coffee cup lids and shopping bags covering the ground or floating all around you. That's the reality for our kids if we don't act now. If we want to let our kids be kids, we have to ensure that the environment they're playing in is clean and safe. That's what today is all about. By banning harmful single-use plastics as early as 2021, and by making companies responsible for recycling their plastic waste, we're protecting our wildlife and giving our kids and grandkids a cleaner and healthier future.
Local restaurant, Streetside Eatery, implemented paper straws months ago and have made other adjustments to ensure they are environmentally conscious.
All the containers that we use for our takeouts, we don't use the plastic t-shirt bags or the grocery bags anymore. We don't use those. All that's paper. Everything we do for takeout, aside from the plastic cutlery, which we're looking into as well, everything else is compostable, recyclable.
Recent stats say Canada creates more than 3 million tons of plastic waste each and every year. The grandfather of a child who's at the center of an ongoing Lethbridge court case is offering a huge monetary reward. Anthony Stephan will give $20,000 for new information on events which took place at the Lethbridge Hospital. The Stephans say that missing medical records have left huge gaps in Ezekiel Stephan's care, including missing blood culture reports. David and Colette Stephan are facing a second trial after being charged with failing to provide the necessaries of life for their 18-month-old son Ezekiel. He died in March of 2012 from bacterial meningitis. The court case is ongoing and is now into its second week. Lethbridge City Council received input as to how $450,000 from the Community Capital Project grant budget should be spent. 10 non-for-profit organizations were chosen to receive grants for various projects to upgrade and renovate their facilities. $200,000 is being earmarked for the Lethbridge Old Timer Sports Association. The group says the funding is sorely needed.
I think this is part of a bigger development. The city is in dire need of changing things up at Henderson here. They're going to need some more change rooms here. And the community room is essentially something that our organization would use, but it's also for the whole community. There's an opportunity there for tournaments on the weekends and for other events to be held there as well.
The City of Lethbridge has their new fire chief. He is Mark Rathwell. Chief Rathwell was originally hired as a paramedic and firefighter in 1996. In 2010, he became the medical training officer, then served as lieutenant in 2014 and advancing to captain in 2016. He then became the deputy chief in November of 2018. Rathwell takes over from retiring Fire Chief Rich Hildebrand, who will continue working until the end of August. St. Michael's Health Centre has been serving the community for 90 years. The Galt Museum and Archives opened an exhibit this weekend to highlight the faith-based care that has been helping people for nearly a century. The Sisters of St. Martha, who started the hospital, will have a monument dedicated to them in our city as well. With the recent hot weather we've been receiving, the city opened Henderson Pool for the season. The popular summer stop features water slides, a climbing wall, diving board, and the Rotary Spray Park. Westminster Outdoor Public Pool, meanwhile, is set to open later this Saturday. A Calgary City Councillor thinks a $400 fine for cycling too fast on the city's cycling trails is a bit steep. Ward 9 Councillor Giancarlo Cara says fines should reflect the actual damage that is inflicted on property and life. Most paths have a posted speed limit of 20 kilometers an hour. A bylaw change earlier this year bumped the fine for exceeding the limit by 10 to 15 kilometers an hour from $40 to $400. Cyclists caught going up to 10 kilometers over the posted pathway limit could be fined up to $150. When we reached out to the City of Lethbridge about the cycling bylaws in our city, a spokesperson said our bylaws are outdated and are currently being reviewed. Federal Conservative leader Andrew Scheer says genocide is not the right word to describe what is being done to generations of Indigenous women and girls in Canada. Scheer says the deaths are heartbreaking and need addressing, but calling them a genocide is inviting international action and scrutiny that are not warranted. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau used the genocide comment after receiving the recent report on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
I believe, as most as Canadians do, that every single life lost is a tragedy, has a huge impact on families and loved ones, and that there are concrete things that the government can do, all levels of government can do, to help protect vulnerable people in our society, specifically Indigenous women and girls. That being said, the ramifications of the term genocide are very profound. They have a lot of, that word and term carries a lot of meaning. I think that the tragedy involved with missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls is its own thing. It is its own tragedy. It does not fall into that category of genocide.
A mandatory evacuation order for an Alberta Indigenous community that has been in place due to a wildfire in the northern part of the province has been lifted. It means residents of Peerless Trout First Nation can return home, but the community still remains on evacuation alert. Alberta Wildfire says the fire threat remains very high. One mandatory evacuation order remained in effect for residents of Wabasca, Big Stone Cree Nation, and the Chippewan Lake Village. A wildfire has torched at least 5 homes in the lakeside community of Traverse Bay, which is located north of Winnipeg. Officials say up to 40 people have been forced from the area. Officials say the fire broke out late yesterday afternoon and was soon out of control. Local fire crews and provincial water bombers have been fighting the flames. One person was killed and several others were injured after a construction crane toppled on an apartment building in Dallas yesterday. A witness says at first she thought it was a tornado that hit the area.
I opened the door and saw the debris. We thought it was a tornado. The crane was coming. He told me the crane was falling. We tried to run, barely made it. The man next to me broke his neck. I helped him out of the apartment, him and his dog. He's okay. They have him in the ambulance now. I went next door to doors, knocking on doors, making sure everybody was okay. A few people came out. They were okay next to us. The man next door, he was yelling for help. I knocked on his door and he cracked it open enough for me to get to him, and I helped pull him out of his apartment.
Tornado sirens echoed around Megan McSpadden's apartment as the young woman rested in bed following a long 9.5-hour shift. Like many in Jefferson City, Missouri, she was used to the sound. Megan and her family had to vacate their apartment immediately, leaving little time to salvage personal belongings. Samaritan's Purse volunteers arrived 32 hours after the devastating storm hit, ready to help.
We heard this loud crash and it woke my daughter up, which freaked me out. You know, I got her and I put her in my lap, and that's when I decided to take a look outside and knew that we had gotten hit by a tornado. Knowing my daughter is safe It's everything. I don't know what I would have done if something bad would have happened to her.
On May 22nd, at about 11 o'clock, an EF3 tornado made a direct hit on the community and surrounding areas of Jefferson City, Missouri. Samaritan's Purse is here, helping in Jesus' name. We're here helping people with tarping their roofs, cutting trees off their properties, gather up valuables, and we're just loving on them, showing them the love of Christ.
It blows my mind that people have such kindness in their hearts to travel miles and miles and miles to, you know, come help people that they don't know. I feel very, very blessed and very, very lucky, especially for my little girl.
We pray, Lord, that you would be with them. They've gone through such hardship, and you've been there protecting them during all of it.
I have been through a lot of things in my life, and I did lose my faith a little bit. And after this, it just shows me how good he is and how much he watches over us every day. He keeps us safe.
We just want you to know that, that God loves you. He hears you, and this is the beginning of recovery.
Moving on from here, I'm definitely gonna introduce God more into my daughter's life, attend church more frequently. There will be definitely a lot of changes now that I know that he's protecting us.
Hong Kong's leader said her government will move ahead with amendments to extradition laws despite a massive protest against them. Hundreds of thousands protested against the laws with fears about China's broadening footprint in the semi-autonomous territory.
The intensity of these 4 months is quite unprecedented for a bill proposed by the government to have this intensity of discussion. So I would say that while we will continue to do the communication and explanation, there is very little merit to be gained to delay the bill. It will just cause more anxiety and divisiveness in society.
Night basketball fans in Canada have waited 24 years for has finally arrived. The Toronto Raptors have a chance to win their first NBA title in franchise history this evening. Jurassic Park outside of Scotiabank Arena has seen thousands of fans waiting for hours to see the game on the big screen. For tonight's Game 5, fans have already been camping out for many days. Tonight's forecast in Toronto is calling for showers. The fans are pretty excited that history could be made tonight.
We weren't sure if there's going to be like a couple hundred people here, or as there were, only 2. So we're number 3 and 4. We're crazy fans. We've been following this all the way, and we're not bandwagoners.
This is my grandpa's hat. It's actually vintage. It's not like replica. It's like the original. So he's passed away, so he'd be really, really proud to see us here. We've been really following them, playing up basketball. You know, like Steve Nash was a huge inspiration, and now to like see how the game has grown is like so cool. So it's definitely like a historic like moment for all of Canada, really.
Hopefully the Raptors will make history tonight and Mother Nature will cooperate for the fans in Jurassic Park. We had a nice day overall, but there's a slight chance of rain in our region tonight. Complete weather details are coming up. Lots of clouds and spotty showers in some areas of southwestern Alberta today. Tonight, a chance of more showers developing with a low near 6. Just a few clouds tomorrow with a high expected near 23. Even warmer on Wednesday with a daytime high near 28. A low pressure system returns on Thursday, bringing more rain and a high of 27. Showers and cooler on Friday with a high of 23. Saturday, expect a mixture of sun and cloud and a high of 22. 24 under a mainly cloudy sky on Sunday. Looking at the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 22 and an average low of 8. The highest temperature on this date was recorded in 1956 at 34 degrees, and the record low was 0 in 1999. Sunrise was at 5:24, sunset at 9:37. Let's see how tomorrow's shaping up nationally. It'll be mainly sunny at 26 in Victoria, sunshine at 24 for Vancouver. Just a few clouds at 21 is expected in Calgary on Tuesday. Mainly sunny at 22 for Edmonton. A chance of thunder showers at 18 for Regina tomorrow. Rain at 18 as well for Saskatoon. Expect sunshine at 19 degrees for Winnipeg. Toronto will be mainly sunny as well and a high near 21. Clearing at 19 degrees for Ottawa. Rain at 19 for Montreal tomorrow. In the Maritimes, Fredericton, New Brunswick will have light showers at 19. Halifax, Nova Scotia will have rain at 18. Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island will also have showers and should see a high of 22. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect rain off and on and a high near 12 degrees on Tuesday. Hudson's Bay Company shares were up 40% today after a group of shareholders announced a bid to take the retailer private. The group holds a 57% stake in the company and is offering a $9.45 a share for the remaining stock. That is a 48% premium over Friday's closing price. A spokesperson for the group says it has become clear that HBC faces significant challenges in an evolving retail environment. Those challenges should be addressed in a private market setting. The deal is conditional on the completion of an agreement HBC announced to sell its remaining retail and real estate holdings in Germany for $1.5 billion. Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation says the annual rate of housing starts was down 13.3% last month over April. The agency says the seasonally adjusted rate slipped to just over 202,000 units in May. That failed to meet analyst expectations of 205,000. CMHC says the pace of single-detached urban starts rose 1.8% last month, but that was offset by an 18.5% drop in urban multiple projects such as condominiums, apartments, and townhomes. The Canadian Crop Hail Association says this year's weather conditions were similar to last year, which saw some of the most severe storms ever across Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. The group says crop seedlings like canola and peas can be affected by early hailstorms, so it recommends producers have hailstorm coverage in place early this season. A storm on June 14th of last year wiped out many crops across the prairies. The association says some insurers reported it to be one of the costliest June storms on record. Fiat Chrysler is in talks to produce self-driving commercial vehicles with Aurora. It is an autonomous vehicle company led by former Google, Tesla, and Uber executives. FCA and Aurora have a deal to lay the groundwork for a partnership to use Aurora's self-driving system in Ram and Fiat vehicles used for deliveries. Aurora already has partnerships with both Volkswagen and Hyundai. Now, here's a look at today's markets. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, Ottawa says it is aiming to ban single-use plastics by the year 2021. A senior official says the Liberal government will announce moves to ban water bottles, drinking straws, Q-tips, and food wrapping that are ending up in landfills, waterways, and oceans. But two government officials say no list of banned products will be unfurled right away. Lethbridge has a new Liberal candidate heading into the fall federal election. Up next, BCN's Paul Arthur introduces you to Amy Bronson. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Lethbridge Women's Connection presents Let Us Entertain You, Thursday, June 13th in the lower level of the Keg. This inspiring evening will feature a delicious dinner, live musical entertainment by the Sassay Quartet and Southern Accord Chorus, plus freelance writer and ovarian cancer survivor Kathy Mogus will share a powerful message called From Failure to Freedom. Cost is $22. For reservations, call B at 403-328-1708 or call Linda at 403-381-2574. Come celebrate with your Latin American neighbors at the Festival Latino Lethbridge 2019, taking place Saturday, June 29th, beginning at noon at Exhibition Grounds Pioneer Park. Presented by the Lethbridge Latin American Association, enjoy live entertainment, dance performances, traditional Latin food, and more. All are welcome for this free event. For details, visit llaa.ca. Easy Does It is an Al-Anon support group for adult children of alcoholics. Get an opportunity to share about your experiences with those who understand and learn healthy coping skills for your relationships. This group meets Thursdays at 7 p.m. at the Church of the Good Shepherd. For details, call Judy at 403-329-0661. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
The federal election won't be held until October, but the campaigning has already started in earnest right across the nation. In Lethbridge, the Liberals have a new candidate, Amy Bronson. Good to have you with us, Amy. So welcome to Bridge City News. Tell us a little bit about yourself, first of all.
Hi, Paul. Thanks so much for having me today. So absolutely, I am the new federal Liberal candidate for Lethbridge for the October election. And Lethbridge is the region I was raised in. My mother is a nurse, and my father is a small business owner in the beef cattle industry. So I grew up visiting ranches and feedlots around this community, really understanding our ties to agriculture, as well as the strong public services and understanding of our healthcare system. And that really shapes my values. And as I grew up in Lethbridge, I was participated in the performing arts community. I graduated from LCI, and I went on to education, higher education. I've since then worked across Canada as well as internationally in a variety of nonprofit and private sector roles, and now building a career as a management consultant. I've worked nationally. So, you know, I live in Lethbridge, and I'm really happy to be here and honored to be representing my hometown in this election.
Well, very good. Now, what's the motivation, you know, with all that background to get involved in politics? You know, it's blood sport essentially, right?
Yeah, it's, you know, sometimes it's not for the faint of heart, and frankly, the motivation to get involved in politics and the Liberal Party in Southern Alberta is because you care. And I'll tell you what I care about. You know, throughout my experiences, I've seen the role that the federal government really can play when you have a strong representative championing your region and your riding, really working with the constituency across all of its different unique needs. And Lethbridge is a really interesting, unique region. That really makes a difference. I'm also very passionate and committed to the democratic process in this country, and I believe in the role that campaigns play in having a strong presence across parties in each and every part of this country, Lethbridge in particular, because you get to reach the community, and that's the kind of approach that I'm bringing, and I seek to be the member of Parliament in Lethbridge so I can do that hard work for the community.
Okay. You're an artist. You mentioned that. Anything you're going to do with funding for the arts? That's always a bit of an election issue. Maybe not the top issue, but, you know, hey, you're an artist, right?
Yeah, you know, for myself, I'm a singer-songwriter, folk musician. This remains a hobby of mine as I've gone on to my professional business career. I have recorded albums and played throughout the community. It's been an amazing, supportive place. The Lethbridge Performing Arts community really adds a lot of value to this region. It brings us together, provides us entertainment. It's key. I'm proud that the Liberal Party of Canada really values our arts and culture, will invest in that, is keen to invest in the local communities and support those initiatives. And there's more to arts and culture investments than jobs for artists or enjoying ourselves and having that important entertainment and identity building. This is actually about the economic activity around the arts. You know, for every arts job, we see also jobs surrounding that. We have technical jobs, trades jobs. It brings economic activity and prosperity and really enhances our experiences in Canada.
Okay. Now, switching from maybe one that isn't the top issue seems to be almost always, and you did tie in the arts with this, but that's jobs, right? Yeah, so exactly. Every politician always has that at the top of their list. Job creation. Easier said than done, but what would you do to see jobs increase here in Southern Alberta?
Yeah, absolutely. Jobs are key, and you know, Alberta in particular, where that issue is top of mind for Albertans and Southern Albertans as well. So, you know, the Liberal track record, the federal Liberal government since 2015 has had a great track record on job creation. We've had 1 million jobs created since then, and we need to see more of that growth in the Lethbridge riding, in the Lethbridge region. And in order to do that, I think we need to have conversations about what are our unique assets here. We have incredible agriculture, and we're able to access incredible talent from our local university, our local college. Are we talking to those value-added agriculture manufacturers? Are we listening to them to talk about expanding? And also, are we taking advantage of the technology here that we can be working with? Are we bringing technology entrepreneurship that leverages our agricultural assets? Those are are the kind of conversations I want to have throughout the campaign and hopefully as a member of Parliament. And, you know, frankly, let's talk about the jobs that we want to keep. Because there's a key to job creation, that's great. We also need to keep the jobs we have. And we've had thousands of jobs in call centers in Lethbridge over our time here. You know, I worked in a call center in Lethbridge when one day we went to work and we found out that our jobs were going to move south of the border. And I want to ask, where were our politicians? Where was our federal representative when those things happened? How do we work to keep those jobs here when those kinds of things happen?
Okay. You want to keep the jobs as well, and that does make sense. Now, one thing that is huge in this election is, of course, the energy sector in Alberta. And the federal Liberals have taken a fair bit of flack over, again, you know, pipelines not being built or, you know, getting stopped partway through or being delayed and so forth. So what would you do, I guess, to you know, keep the pipelines going that we have and get some new ones going, especially Trans Mountain and so forth? What would it take to get that happening?
Yeah, I think the Liberal government's been extremely clear on its commitment to this pipeline and to the Trans Mountain pipeline being built, making the historic investment in purchasing that pipeline, as well as, you know, really working to get that built across into our tidewater. What we didn't see, though, is also important. So under 10 years of the Harper Conservative government, we did not get a pipeline built. So this is actually historic, unprecedented action that actually sees us making progress towards completing that pipeline. And that commitment is extremely clear, and that commitment is going to carry through the next election and through the next term.
Now, this ties in a little bit with climate change as well, which is always a federal election issue. But let me ask you, I guess, what needs to happen with climate change to protect the environment, but also at the same time talking about, you know, putting Trans Mountain into effect and hopefully more energy projects. A big complaint we hear from the business owners is that there's too much red tape to jump through, especially around climate change. And there's so much uncertainty, it's always changing. So how do you invest, you know, millions, billions of dollars into something you're not sure where it's headed?
You know, I think when we look at climate change, this is an issue that's really this affects each and every one of us. Climate, you know, increasing temperature. We know now that Canada is warming faster than other countries. This is important, and this is impactful on agriculture. It is not good for the agricultural industry to have uncertain temperatures, to have uncertain futures in agriculture, and pollution isn't good for us. It's not good for our kids. It's not good for, you know, for the future. And so when we see the impacts of climate change, you know, affecting us, increasing forest fires, increasing flooding, that's expensive as well. That, you know, pushes up the rates of insurance. That pushes up our need for our responders to be there. It strains those resources, and action is needed. And, you know, it's not a new issue. Climate change was an enormous issue in the previous election. It's an issue in all of the elections. This is not new, and what's new, I think, is action. The Liberal Party has been making action to implement a climate plan. This plan to, you know, address some of these key issues. This is a very, you know, this has been tested throughout Canada in other jurisdictions as well. So, you know, there is a proof points. There are proof points behind this plan.
Okay, now part of this plan is the carbon tax, and that, of course, is a huge issue in this election. It's supposed to cause businesses to emit less because it's going to cost them more, you know, with carbon emissions, right? So they're going to have to pay for it. But what if that doesn't work? What if people in this business, in the energy business, decide to, well, you know what, we can afford to pay this tax, and so we're going to keep on doing that, passing on the cost to the consumers and so forth, and yet the emission levels stay the same. So what if that happens? Are you going to keep on going with the carbon tax federally?
So the idea of the carbon pricing, putting that price on pollution and this levy, it's a free market-based solution. So it works, you know, it works that way, and that is, I think, valuable for the business community as it is free market-based. Now, it also has been proven to work and has had good results in British Columbia. We've also seen it in other jurisdictions. You know, that those are kind of the key facts that we need to be remembering as we move forward with this plan.
But if the emission levels don't change, I mean, do you think this carbon tax is actually going to change the level of emissions?
In other areas, we have seen that, yes, that happens. And it is crucial that this action is taken.
Okay. All right. Well, let's drop back to agriculture here as well. You had mentioned that you grew up on kind of a beef farm, feedlot, that sort of thing. It is certainly one of the backbones of our Canadian economy. What needs to happen to improve situations for whether you're a canola farmer, grain farmer, of course, canola in the news these days, but beef and pork exports also being threatened. So any thoughts on how we can find new markets or do something to change our situation with China, that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really, as you mentioned, it was really key in my family. We, certainly feel the direct impacts of our international relationships, and especially, our relationship. We have a very strong relationship with our neighbor to the south, and this is key. So we need, taking that action that we've taken to, stay strong as we negotiate the new NAFTA, and we're getting to that point now where we do have the USMCA agreement. So we're holding steady with our most important friend and neighbor to the south, where we can keep that strong relationship really tied to our agriculture community here. That's key. We've also seen in 2016, the Liberal government negotiated the removal of all remaining restrictions for our beef exports to Mexico. This did not happen under the Conservative government, and that's been really an important thing, as they're our third largest export market for that industry. So that's key. We also are diversifying, our trade strategy, making sure that we have new trade agreements. We've seen a number of those signed under the leadership of the Liberal government. The CTPP enhances our access to Asian markets outside of the Chinese market, and this is key. I was catching up with a friend of mine who works in Tokyo. She's Southern Albertan. She works for a similar company as I've worked for in Tokyo, and we were catching up, and she says, guess what I saw last week? I went down to the local butcher and I saw Lethbridge pork. She bought Lethbridge pork in Tokyo, and she served it up to her Japanese colleagues, and they loved it. And that's the kind of thing we see when we have expanded trade agreements with countries like Japan. And that's the work that I want to continue to do as a member of Parliament for Lethbridge, and really promote that export diversification.
Cool story to see Lethbridge pork in Japan.
Yeah, it's awesome. We got to champion things around here.
That's good. All right. Healthcare, always an election issue. Now, people I talk to do get frustrated with seeing how much money gets poured into the system. It just, every year it keeps on going up, right? And yet we still face, long lineups for things that we need, whether it's an MRI or a doctor visit and so forth. So what needs to change?
Yeah, in regards to the healthcare, industry, the Liberal government has enhanced the transfers for the healthcare sector to the provinces, and really is committed to working on that issue interprovincially and jurisdictionally. So. Right,
but that is providing more money. But again, it doesn't seem to be fixing the problem, right? So on the one hand, we do have, let's say, conservative right of center parties tend to say, well, can we do something with the private sector, right? Now, some would argue, say, well, that's U.S.-style healthcare. But on the other hand, we do see, jurisdictions like Sweden, Switzerland, Great Britain. These aren't right-of-center, constituencies that are using this, it seems, with some success to, reduce the lineups and provide better efficiency in healthcare. So, what can we do as Canadians to actually make the system work, to cut down the lines, other than throwing more money at it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think one of the first places to start is cuts aren't the answer. The kind of cuts that we do see that immediately happen when we are in a conservative environment, a conservative political environment, those cuts are not going to reduce those wait times unless we have a really strong understanding of what's going on in our healthcare system. How do we work with the people delivering those services, understanding the roadblocks that they're facing, as they go through their system, and really understanding that, working across jurisdictions and making sure that money goes to where it needs to go, and working with those local delivery partners across jurisdictions.
Okay, but if cuts aren't made, and again, the cost for healthcare keeps on going up, right? So we have deficits that we want to deal with. I mean, I think the general consensus from the whole population is that we'd rather not see, deficits continue, right? So any thoughts on where do we go with that? How do we balance that, where we're at some point hopefully getting rid of the deficits and, clearing up our budgets, getting them balanced and so forth?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think, as you mentioned, the healthcare costs rising, the healthcare costs, we want to make sure that that is something that at the federal level we are coordinating on. And one of the things that has been proposed in the federal budget for 2019 is that National national pharmacare plan. So that is something that is really designed to, and if, as we go forward with that budget, that is something that's designed to cut those costs. And where the federal government is able to do so, that is a clear plan, a clear action that we want to take, and we want to see taken, and I want to advocate for that.
So you think pharmacare would actually reduce costs?
Yeah, that's the aim of that system. Is we need to be able to to reduce those costs by having increased coordination on how we're delivering pharmaceuticals.
Right, although there certainly would be a cost to that, of course, with tax dollars essentially paying for the drugs, right?
Tax dollars are paying for the drugs now, and it is a plan that is going to be, a more effective way to purchase those and work together across the country.
Right, yeah, it could reduce the cost of the actual drugs.
Exactly.
Although again, at this point, a lot of people are paying out of pocket for it, whereas this would put it more on the government. The education system, your thoughts on what needs to change in our education system? Education
is incredibly important for our country and our region, and to continue to prosper. And so I think when we think about education, we want to think about what's happening as well with our employment, what's happening in our jobs and our industries, and what are those needs, and how do we work on that. The Liberal government's commitments have really been around thinking about how do we enhance lifelong learning. How do we enable people to continue to grow those skills that are essential, that match our job market? And when we're thinking about things that are how do we build our careers for the future of work. As a millennial generation, we're not experiencing the same employment security that people have had before. So we have to be ready to adapt as a country and as a system, as post-secondary, for skills training. The Canada Training Benefit is one example of that, proposed in the budget 2019. That's going to bring people, abilities to more flexibly upskill, get new skills throughout their careers. We've also really seen, enhanced commitments to co-op placements in the post-secondary education system that are essential, that build those skills for us so that we can go into employment and come to the market with those skills.
Well, we're up against the clock and we're out of time already.
But, great. Wow.
Yeah. But thank you, Amy. Appreciate your time here today.
Good. Well, thanks so much for having me, Paul. I am so excited to be here in Lethbridge, and I can't wait to meet all of your viewers at their doors and say hi.
All right. Good luck to you. Amy Bronson, the federal Liberal candidate for Lethbridge.
Abortion has been in the news quite a bit lately, with numerous U.S. states enacting fetal heartbeat laws, and with our Canadian Prime Minister voicing his strong support for abortion in this country. Joining me now at the desk is Kimberly Vroom with Lethbridge and District Pro-Life to discuss a lot of pro-life issues. Welcome to Bridge City News, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Why do you think it is that the pro-life message has always been met with so much controversy?
Abortion is so polarizing because when people love abortion, they don't realize what it actually is. And so when you show them the truth of it, they don't want to see it. They try to hide from it. But when you understand what abortion is and how it actually hurts women and it kills children every day, then you can't just stand by and do nothing. So that's why I think we have such very active participants on both sides of the debate, because some people are so strongly for it because they don't realize what they're defending, and the people that are against it realize what they're doing, and they realize that they can't sit around and not have a voice for the unborn.
People who are pro-choice, Kimberly, they often say, you know what, this is my life, my body, my choice, right? But then pro-lifers say, no, there's more than just your body involved. There's another person's body growing inside of you. That's the problem. That's the issue.
Yep.
So what kind of a conversation? Tell me about some of those conversations you have with pro-choice people. Alrighty.
So when you're talking to someone who's pro-choice, the first thing you need to do is establish common ground. So basically, you say, you know what? Yeah, I agree with you. Women should have a choice over what they can do with their bodies. However, I don't believe that we can justify the killing of another human being so that they can have control over their bodies. Then they'll usually respond with something like, well, they can't survive outside of the womb on their own. Well, that doesn't mean that they're any less human or should be granted any less rights than anybody else. Pro-lifers, we're seen as anti-choice and anti-women, but what we're really against is the one choice, is just abortion. We're against that choice because it actively kills another human being. There's so many choices for women to do if they want to go to school, if they want to parent, they can give their child up for adoption. There's so many ways that we can help them and encourage them to be healthy, we just don't think abortion is a morally justifiable option.
Some pro-choice people I've spoken with in the past, Kimberly, they say, you know, we're very much pro-life except when somebody's raped, attacked, raped, brutalized, and then they don't want that seed growing in another individual from a rapist, you know?
Mm-hmm.
They can't justify that. They're like, there's no way I want that seed growing in my wife, my daughter, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes people say, I can understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, it's not that baby's fault.
No, it's
right?
not. And we firmly believe that rape is an awful, awful thing, and you know, rapists should be punished to the full extent of the law. And I personally don't believe that they're punished enough in the current climate of our modern society. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, you know, that's the society we live in. But with unborn children, you know, they're a victim of the rape as well because they didn't ask to be created. Mom is just as much a victim, but when she turns her desperation onto her child and goes in through with an abortion, that just creates two victims, a dead child and a mother who's hurting from both the rape and the abortion. And you know, we'd love to give support and give resources to women who have gone through rape. And you know, there's actually there's a big contingency of people who have gotten pregnant from rape or conceived out of rape. And you know, they're fighting for their lives as well, and you know, for their voice, because having an abortion doesn't take away that guilt, the feeling of worthlessness that someone that violates you does, right? It often makes it bigger and you know, makes you feel worse. And so abortion doesn't cure those feelings, and neither does it. It doesn't help women in those situations either.
There was some controversy surrounding some of the bus bench ads involving some of the pro-life ads that we've seen with Lethbridge and District Pro-Life. Some people said they were too graphic, and I think City Hall received something like 200 or 300 calls, so they were yanked, they were pulled off. And now it's in front of the courts.
Yeah, so we have a hearing in October. As far as what the ads were exactly, it was a picture of an unborn child in the womb. Nothing graphic about it, you know, something you see on a 3D ultrasound or, you know, a very high-tech camera. But in City Hall, you know, they received a few hundred supporters from people who said those were too graphic, but they also received over several thousands of pro-life signatures the other way, saying that this is a breach of our freedom of expression and that this is unacceptable. And so, yeah, we have a hearing in October with the courts, and you know, our lawyer's been great. She's been wonderful helping us with this case.
We'll have to keep an eye on that, definitely. What are your thoughts on what's happening in the United States right now? Alabama's saying, you know, they're basically saying legislation is coming out, you know, no abortions are allowed. Doctors can be criminally charged for performing abortions. But then in a state like New York, you can basically bring a baby to term and then kill it. I mean, in the same country, such diametrically opposed positions. Pro-life and pro-choice. What are your thoughts? I
mean, I think that's incredible. That's crazy. But in any country, you're going to find people who are diametrically opposed to abortion. Because here in Canada, we have people who would love to see rid abortion of Canada, like get it out of here, you know, fully. But we also have people who like the fact that it's legal through all 9 months. And you know, in Alabama, it's really great to see that they're willing to stand for life and have those values in place. You know, banning abortion past 6 weeks when the heartbeat can be detected. And it's important to note that in Alabama that the women who are getting illegal abortions aren't the ones that are being charged for this. It's the abortionist. It's the person committing the crime. It is considered a felony. It'll be considered a felony in Alabama if an abortionist does an abortion after 6 weeks.
So pro-choice people are, I guess, saying, Kimberly, well, people are still going to want to have abortions regardless of what the law dictates. So where are these people going to go?
I mean, they'll have to travel out of state, or they will, you know, they will go through with their pregnancy and give the baby up for adoption, which is, you know, the more desirable choice. It's the choice where two people, we save the life of one, and you know, we empower the life of the other.
Our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has gone on record saying he's very much pro-choice, right? Abortion, it's not going to be an issue that's going to be brought up again. The laws in our country. The same thing with Andrew Scheer, the Tory leader, federal Tory leader. He said the same thing. I'm not going to reopen that debate. What are your thoughts on that? How do you feel about that?
I think it's crazy. Abortion was decriminalized 50 years ago, and the law was struck down almost 30 years ago. And I'm sitting here as a 20-year-old, and you're going to tell me that the abortion debate shouldn't be reopened? It's been 50 years. I think it's time we have a talk about it. It's been 50 years of decriminalized and 30 years of just free-for-all, like legal through all 9 months of pregnancy. We're the only developed country in the world that has laws that lacks, actually no laws, in fact, on abortion.
Some argue that abortion is justified because of so little support being available for young, expectant mothers. How do you respond to that?
I would say that, well, as far as what pro-lifers are doing, we're doing as much as we can. We just started a new house called Elsie's House for young and expectant mothers who are in desperate situations, where they can come while they're expecting, be supported through discounted housing, parenting classes, resources, and counseling. They can come live for discounted prices, and they can stay there all the way until their child is 2. We're doing the work. We're willing to help these women who are in desperate situations, who don't think they have it any way out. We're often asked, well, why don't you support these things? Why don't you support people who foster? Why don't you adopt children? Well, the truth of it is we are doing that. That's what pro-lifers are doing. I can, if you come to the Hike for Life on Saturday, you probably see multiple foster children there because they're the people that are willing to sacrifice for them.
What message do you have for the potential fathers? We always hear about the mom and the baby, but there are 2 parties involved, well, 3 parties if you involve the baby. What do you say to the males, the potential fathers?
I would say it's also your responsibility. Abortion makes it so easy for men to, the woman is pregnant, they can just leave, and the woman has to have to bear the burden of
big responsibility, financial responsibility too.
That too, and child support is a very flawed system. A lot of men don't end up paying for it, and if you can't prove the paternity of the father, then they get off scot-free. And I would also encourage men, if your partner is considering abortion, say something. It's really sad that in Canada you can't say you don't have rights over the child, only the woman does. But it is important that you use your voice and you speak to her and you encourage her to put that child up for adoption or to keep the child. You have a say too. Abortion isn't just a women's issue.
Let's talk about Unplanned now, the story about Abby Johnson, the former director of Planned Parenthood, who actually apparently went into her abortion clinic, saw an abortion being performed, the baby being ripped out of the mother's womb, and then instantly changed her mind, became pro-life. She left as the director, and now this movie Unplanned is not being seen, or it's not being picked up by Landmark, Cineplex, the major theater distributors here in Canada. So, I guess some churches can actually ask to be brought in?
Well, we're hoping to purchase the DVD once it comes to DVD, and then we will probably get in touch with Movie Mill to see if we can show some showings there. Otherwise, we'll show it at churches and any other place that would be willing to show it. We've had so much support for it on these petitions online that I don't think we could, even if it was banned by distributors, we'd have to show it at some point in Canada.
Do you think it's Hollywood leans more to the left? That's why they're very much pro-choice?
I'm not really sure why in Canada.
A form of censorship, perhaps?
Possibly. I know that in the States it's very much considered a Christian film or one that's not valid. But from all the reviews that I've seen, I personally haven't seen it. It's still a good movie, despite the message it sends. But the message that it sends is a very heartbreaking but very positive one, showing how abortion really changes people.
The movie received an R rating, not because of foul language, not because of anything else, but the violence of actually ripping the baby out of the mother's womb, how graphic that was. That's why it received an R rating.
Well, I totally agree with that. I believe that, abortion is rated R. It shouldn't be allowed. It's terrible, it's egregious, it's violent.
Do you think more expectant mothers should maybe go actually see an abortion being performed if they're considering an abortion that would maybe scare them straight or have them change their minds?
I am more for showing them, before they have the abortion, have to take a look at the ultrasound before they're given the choice to abort. Because often when they go to abortion clinics, they do an ultrasound to see how big the baby is, and the screen is turned away from the mom, and they just, that's all they see. They see the back of a screen and a technician holding the ultrasound over their belly. They might not even hear the heartbeat.
At what point do we hear the heartbeat? 6 weeks?
Well, the heart starts beating at 3 weeks.
3 weeks. Okay.
It can probably be detected around 6 weeks, which is why the abortion ban in Alabama is around 6 weeks. But, that doesn't, just because the heart starts beating around 3 weeks, at conception, when the egg and the sperm come together and there's a brand new set of DNA, 46 chromosomes, we know that's when life begins. Biologically speaking, that's when life begins, and that's when life should be protected.
Do you ever make your way to schools or other community groups and talk to young people about why you're so passionate about being pro-life?
Well, considering I am still a youth,
Yeah.
I consider myself
well, 20
still
years young, right?
Yeah, it's pretty. That's pretty.
So you're not too far
yeah.
removed from being in high school yourself, right?
You know, I was on my Lethbridge my Students for Life club in high school. You know, we tried to support single mothers with donations from our club. You know, we held a Life Day. We had shirts and T-shirts, and we encouraged all of the students to raise money, and we had a wonderful day. As far as talking to youths, you know, I've done activism on the streets of Lethbridge. I went to Florida for a week, and we did activism on the campuses there, just because there's less regulation and we have an opportunity to show.
What was that like? Tell me about that experience.
With CCBR, we go down to Florida, Canadian Center for Bioethical Reform. We go down to Florida for a week. It's for college students and high school students. It's, you know, in February, so you get a nice warm break. We're going to Florida. You go down to campuses, and we have the signs up around the campuses, and we learned apologetics. And we talk to students there about abortion, and you know, that's really important down there because we see the people that, you know, they're not thinking about it, but once they do have an unplanned pregnancy, you know, we've already caught them before that. We've already given them the information. We've already shown them what abortion really is, and so they can't say they didn't know. You know, it's so important to get people young, especially high school students and college students, to let them know what abortion really is.
Do you think a lot of people are maybe coming at it from the wrong mindset? I know with the recent March for Life that took place in Ottawa, over 100,000 people, the anti-pro-lifers called it a pro-choice protest. It wasn't really a protest, it was a rally for pro-life, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's just the whole mindset is wrong. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, as much as it's a rally, it's still a protest. We go to Ottawa, we're on Parliament Hill. You know, there's no way they can ignore us. And yet somehow the media still find a way to show that the pro-choice and the pro-life groups are the same size, when clearly there's 100,000 pro-lifers and, you know, a few thousand pro-choicers, if even that. But it's a rally. It's also a celebration of life, you know. I've been to the March for Life in Ottawa. It's one of the most uplifting times, the most encouraging to go to. But it's also important that if you go to a March for Life to say in Edmonton or Ottawa or Toronto, that you go there for your encouragement, and then you go home and do work. And you work in your community to end abortion there. And you put the time and effort into helping the unborn.
Kimberly, one last thought. We've got a viewer right now who may be pregnant, is watching our program, and is considering getting abortion. What message do you have for that person?
I would say you're not alone. You know, there's so many resources we have here in Lethbridge. We have the Crisis Pregnancy Care Center. We have Elsie's House. Abortion is a decision that you'll live with forever, and it's not one you can reverse. Whereas, you know, if you have your child, you have so much time. You can decide if you want to put them up for adoption. You know, you have the whole pregnancy to think about that. And then you can decide if you want to parent or you want to adopt. You know, it's a life-giving option and not a death-giving one. And I would encourage them to, you know, look at their options and also consider what abortion really is.
Kimberly Vroom with Lethbridge and District Pro-Life, thanks so much for joining me in studio today.
Thank you so much.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and have a great night.